The year 2007 was the last time we've officially heard from Gordon Freeman and his adventures trying to fight the Combine. Obviously, I don't even think it's a spoiler at this point that Episode 2 ended with a massive cliffhanger, and it's been 12 years. Episode 3 didn't get finished for one reason or another, and Valve has been floundering around with the Half-Life IP for over a decade. Now, we know that they're working on a very large Half-Life VR game, but that itself is actually a prequel to Half-Life 2, so we're still going to be left hanging in terms of the cliffhanger. And by all intents and purposes, it seemed like that was going to be our lives forever. Until August of 2017, when former Valve employee and Half-Life lead writer Mark Laidlaw posted Epistle 3 on his website. Shortly after posting, the world realized that this was a love letter to the Half-Life fans and closure to anybody wanting to find it. Valve obviously was not going to be releasing anything soon that wrapped up the Half-Life 2 loose ends. Mark Laidlaw detailed exactly what he would like to do with the end of the episodic trilogy, and following, we had a lot of different community projects sprout up. Some of them very small, of which you can play on the Epistle 3 Game Jam website, linked down below, and some of them much larger and far more ambitious. As of now, there are two major Epistle 3 community games being made, Project Borealis and Boreal Alyph. Today, we're going to be talking about Boreal Alyph, being created by the team Keep Away from Fire, and is the project that remains the most faithful to the original source material. This is a modern interpretation of a Half-Life game taking place in an updated version of the source engine and picking up where Episode 2 leaves off, taking place not only in the Arctic but many different environments and being a love letter to the modern Half-Life fan. This is everything I've learned about Boreal Alyph from my time I've spent with the Keep Away from Fire development team. Here we go. I have essentially been elevator pitched Boreal Alyph as a modern interpretation of a Half-Life game still using the source engine, and this is a major point of contention between Project Borealis and Boreal Alyph. Boreal Alyph is using an enhanced version of the source engine, with things like PBR implementation being one of the major new features added into their engine. Development on this game, of course, is not going to be going incredibly quickly. This is a passion project for many of the developers on the team, and not a single person will be making a lot of money from this, if anything. Everybody has lives. Everybody has jobs outside of this, and the development timeline may unfortunately be somewhat similar to Black Mesa. So, for example, one of the team's major roadblocks is actually a huge piece of news. Boreal Alyph has a source engine license. Boreal Alyph has direct permission from Valve to be creating what they want to create. And not only that, but this is one of a few major community projects that have received source engine licenses and Valve interest. So while the team has been pretty much needing to port everything over to the new engine branch and sometimes rewriting things from scratch now that they have access directly to the code base, the majority of the work being done on the game is very much systems first. Something like the artificial intelligence is being given insane amounts of attention. It's being rewritten, and a great example that I have been given is that the Combine flank the player. The Combine don't always just run right at the player. They can take cover, they can find flank routes, and they are significantly more difficult. The team gave me a build, and I have played through a lot of what they currently have. And yeah, the Combine are significantly smarter. The whole point is that this is a skill-based Half-Life game. Weapons have a reasonable amount of realistic recoil. The enemies are significantly smarter, and the levels are very much based around the design philosophies of Half-Life 2, being linear sections followed by larger arenas, with different physics-based puzzles within the environments themselves. Now, as for the story, they are only taking inspirations from Epistle 3. This is not going to be a beat-for-beat recreation of everything that we already know. Not only that, but this game is not going to take place specifically just in the Arctic the entire time. They have told me that straight on. There are going to be many different places that you will be exploring as Gordon Freeman throughout the entirety of this game. And even though a lot of the time being spent in development has more to do with systems, artificial intelligence, weapon sets, etc., they do know what they're going to be developing once they get to the point where the systems are clean and they can start really pushing forward on campaign-based levels. This is being developed very similarly to how Half-Life was developed originally, in a linear fashion following the systems being created, which is great because what is finished, mostly being developer levels, feel just like Half-Life 2, but with more of a modern twist to it. The graphics that they are pushing very much look like a modern interpretation of Half-Life because it's not just flat lighting that you would find in Half-Life 2, PBR, dynamic shadows. It's all here, and it all looks really good, especially considering this is still mid-development. The team, thanks to the fact that they have a license and a direct line into Valve, has been developing many different new ideas in terms of enemies. If you take a look at the concept art they supplied to me, there's a lot of different things going on here. clear. The enemies take on different looks depending on where they are, but that is still just cosmetic differences as of now. So if you see an Arctic version of an enemy, it's still pretty much the same enemy, it just fits the theme of the environment that you're in. One of the most interesting things that they're developing right now is a tool called Blacksmith. Essentially, it's a modern version of Valve's development tools, and because Keep Away from Fire has an engine license, they're going to be rewriting the entire tool set to the best of their ability so that they can create their game the best they can. I haven't received word on whether or not they're going to be releasing the toolset along with the game when that date comes, but they're remaking Hammer, and they're calling it Blacksmith, and that's really interesting. Now, there are a few things that we know aren't planned, specifically Zen. There is no Zen planned, and as of now, a lot of the locations that the player will be going through are new to the Half-Life series. Unlike something like HLVR, this is not going to be a nostalgia-fueled, tug-at-your-heartstrings kind of easy way of getting into a person's mind trip. This is an original, modern, skill-based interpretation of a Half-Life game taking place in the Source engine. And since you're looking at the gameplay that I know you're seeing, I think you can see the heavy inspiration from Half-Life 2's level design, and I've played it. And I can personally vouch for the fact that even though these are development levels, the systems they have in place are fantastic. It feels like a Half-Life 3 if they actually finished up the 2011 version, and that's incredible. I obviously will be attempting to keep everybody up to date on everything that goes on with Boreal Alyph. However, since I have access to a build, I will have to be working directly with the development team to make sure that I don't talk about things that I shouldn't, so things are going to be a little different on Valve News Network in relation to Boreal Alyph and Keep Away from Fire. That said, there is a lot to be excited about. Just temper your expectations on release date. It's going to be a little while, but to be completely honest, that's to be expected. It's going to take Valve 5 years to truly develop the follow-up to Half-Life 2, and that'll be in VR. Boreal Alyph is being developed by community members who have other jobs, other interests, and lives. So give them some time and give them some feedback. The raw, unedited gameplay will be uploaded to my second channel, Valve News Extra, link to that down in the description below, and thank you very much for watching. I'm Tyler McVicker, this is Valve News Network, I'm selling merch now, link down below. Have a good day, adios.